Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Retirement Cafe podcast, which is kindly brought to you by my friends at the Timeline app. The Timeline app is a state-of-the-art retirement income planning software that helps financial planners like me bring your retirement journey to life and answers your big retirement income questions. This week we are asking the question, why do we prepare so well for birth, yet give so little attention to preparing for death? And what can we do to die well? I had the opportunity to chat with Judy Kauffmann recently and record the following interview for the podcast. Judy is an award-winning author of 2 books on the subject of end-of-life management and bereavement. So here's my conversation with Judy. Well, thank you so much for taking time out to join me today. Judy, could you, for listeners who may not have read any of your books or not know of you, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yes, I was in property for 20 years of my life. I was a single mother and sole supporter of my son, and property gave me the flexibility and the income that I needed. But after 20 years, I kind of hit a brick wall, I guess you would call it. Nowadays, you call it clinical depression, and I just couldn't bear it. And a friend of mine said to me, "Well, I'm not at all surprised." She said, "You're far better suited to work in a hospice than you are in an office," which initially was quite shocking. Excuse me. And then I thought, actually, you know what? She's absolutely right. So I simply gave it up and I started to volunteer in a hospice. And I absolutely loved it. So paradoxically, going to work and earning a lot of money made me miserable. And working in a hospital just made me so happy.
Wow.
So that totally changed the whole direction of my life.
Gosh, that is a big life change.
It was.
And so tell me about that then. You know, how old were you when that happened? When did you make that
I
choice?
was, believe it or not, 50, I was 50,
Wow. Okay.
just before I was 50. And so it was a completely different direction my life went in. So I had to stop thinking in terms of business and start thinking in terms of, well, how am I going to support myself? And my son was by that time old enough, almost old enough to be on his own.
Mm.
Um, so I kind of went down the care route. I became a carer to a lady with dementia, and then I became the care manager of a domiciliary care agency. And then I went into training, and around that time, I think it was around that time I met Mary Jordan. We were introduced. It was a very casual acquaintance who said to me, "Oh, why don't you give Mary Jordan a ring? You know, she's written a book about caring for others."
Mm.
So I phoned her, and it was a really fortuitous meeting because we both had the same passion, which was really talking about end of life. And at the time, end of life, I mean, we are now talking about 12 years ago, and
Mm.
end of life was not discussed at all. I mean, the pendulum is swinging, and when the pendulum swings, as you know, it swings totally in the opposite direction. And I predict that very shortly, this is all we're going to be talking about. It's going to become fashionable in inverted commas, but at the time it was very unfashionable. And we decided to write a book together. I can't remember who of us decided, asked the other one, but it was very clear that this was going to be the way forward for the two of
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. So you've written 2 books with Mary Jordan: The End of Life, The
Yeah.
Essential Guide to Caring, and
Mm.
The Essential Guide to Life After Bereavement. Tell me about that process and you know and what you gained out of it.
I think, as I said, it was a very interesting combination because Mary and I, writing a book with somebody, I don't think I realized how lucky I was at the time, but we balanced each other. We had very different skill sets and we had very different areas of strength. And the combination was perfect. And I felt very, very deeply and passionately that people need to prepare for end of life. I think of it as I think we're all born with a return to sender ticket in our back pocket.
Sure.
And we take, every now and then something happens and we take the ticket out and we look at it, we think, and we put it back, and pretend that it isn't there. But we all have this return to sender ticket. And I believe the best way to have a peaceful end of life is to prepare for it. I often think, if I was in an aeroplane and God forbid it was going to crash, what would go through my mind? It would be, who will look after whoever it is that I care for at the time. And maybe it was my son when he was small, and then maybe it was my dog, and who would care for the people that I care for.
Mm.
And my belongings. I would hate to think that everything was left a mess and nobody, my will wouldn't be written. I think tying up loose ends is a critical way to have a peaceful end of life journey.
Yeah.
And that's what the book was really. It was a combination of how to care for people who are at the end of life, and for the people themselves to prepare for the end of life.
Yes. Now, I mean, I can imagine that a lot of people don't really want to have this kind of conversation with themselves.
No, they don't.
It's not probably in the top of the dinner
No.
table,
No.
So how would you suggest that people actually start looking at this?
Start the conversation. Well, I think I find it a very difficult conversation to have with my family, with my parents, which is bizarre since I wrote the book. But I think the best way to bring it up is to say, oh, I read a really interesting article the other day about end of life, something or other, or I heard a really interesting podcast, which is obviously this one. So I think that's the best way to bring it up, is to use another example. Oh, I was reading about, and I think that's an excellent way to bring it up, because it doesn't make it personal. It's not. It doesn't make it personal, but it makes it interesting. And this is a subject that maybe we should address, so let's address it.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
Sorry for interrupting, but so could you? I mean, you probably, obviously, with your huge experience, you've seen this done well, and you've probably seen this done not so well. Could you give me kind of an example, maybe, of one that you look at and admire and go, that was really, well done, sorted out, etc. From your metrics, and then possibly a story about it hasn't gone quite as well.
Well, I think that the stories where it's gone well are where people have made their wishes very clear, and they've made their wishes very clear to the family as a whole. So that's less interesting. More interesting is when people haven't made their wishes clear, and the family are more or less, well, not more or less, the family are divided. You can have brother against brother or sister against sister, saying, well, mum, and the mother is still alive, but at the end of life. And one part of the family is saying, well, mum would have wanted, to stay alive at all costs. And the other sister would say, well, that's not the conversation I had with mum. And then both sides of the family are wanting what's best for their parent, mother or whoever. And yet they are in conflict because they genuinely believe that they know what that parent wanted. And I think that kind of a rift can last forever.
Yeah.
And I think that's truly tragic. When I speak to people, I always say, write it down, but have the conversation with the entire family. Do not tell one daughter or one part of the family. Tell everybody what your wishes are. So when it comes to it, everybody is in agreement. And even if they don't agree with what you want, they are clear about your wishes. And then, but I think it's really tragic when a family is divided by an end of life decision.
Sure. And do you ever help actually facilitate these conversations, or
I do help facilitate these conversations because I bring up, I simply say it as I've just said it to you. You know, I think it's really important to make your wishes known. And you know, I'm also quite clear. I've told my son what my wishes are, um, because I don't want him to have the decision
No,
um, when he, you know, if he didn't know what I wanted. So yes, no, I don't have a problem with talking about it.
no.
You know, I have to be very careful because I'm so at ease with the conversation. I have to remember to be extremely sensitive because other people are not. To me, it's the same as talking about going on holiday. You know, I've written down, for example, I think you should, I think it's the more you make your wishes known, the more chance you have that your wishes will be carried out. So I've written in detail how I want the room that I die in, you know, the colors that I want, the smells that I want, the view that I want. And there's no guarantee that I'm going to get what I want. But if I don't tell people what I want, I'm not going to get it because I'm very specific about colors and I'm very specific about smells. I don't want to die with a bad smell and I don't want to die with a horrible view, you know. So to me, just write it down. If they don't know, you're not going to get it. And if they do know, you've got a chance. So
Yeah,
everything, write
brilliant,
everything down. What do you want?
brilliant, brilliant. Now, something that really interests me about when we're doing a little bit of research into you and your books and whatever, something really interests me is that I understand well, you don't seem to stop still, which you're in the process of qualifying as an end of life companion or doula, as it's known. Now, this sounds fascinating. Can you tell me more about this?
Yes, it's kind of the gap between between the family and the medical profession. We are not medical. We have no you don't need medical qualifications to be a doula. We're an end of life companion,
Mm.
and that can be from diagnosis to death or any part of that. So we're what's called an informed companion. And I think sometimes it's much easier to speak to somebody who's not a family member or a professional. And we have intensive training on listening skills to actively listen. And it's extremely interesting
Mm.
to learn how to listen. You know, we all think we listen. We don't. We don't. We think we're listening to somebody, but actually we're thinking about what do we want to say in reply, or we're judging them, or we're thinking about something that we've suddenly remembered that we forgot to let the dog out or something. So we don't listen. We think we listen, we don't listen. One of the major skills, of course there are several, of an end-of-life doula or death doula as it's called, uh, is to learn how to listen to somebody and allow them to speak their truth, because sometimes family members won't allow somebody to talk about dying. They say, oh no, you're going to be fine. You know, well, they're not going to be fine. You know, they're not going to be fine. The person knows they're not going to be fine. And saying that you're going to be fine does not make them fine. It doesn't mean they're going to get better. It just means that they're not able to tell you how they feel. And I think that's truly, I'm going to use the word tragic. And I really do think it's tragic that people are not able to speak their truth
Mm.
when they so desperately want to. And we enable people to speak their truth.
Judy, bereavement's pretty complex. It's a complex emotion. Um, how do you, what are your, what's your view on bereavement and how can you help people or kind of work through that process?
Well, I've trained to be a cruise, which is the bereavement charity. I trained to be a cruise bereavement counsellor.
Mm.
And one of the very interesting theories is the blocked pipe theory, which means that you've had a loss in your life that hasn't been processed properly, and that prevents future losses being processed. It's as though the initial loss blocks the emotional pipe, and any future losses then overflow. I had a client who was still actively grieving for her mother, who had died 20 years previously. And when we discussed other deaths in her family, she casually mentioned that her father, who she had absolutely adored, had been a long distance, excuse me, lorry driver and had an accident while he was abroad and simply not returned. She had not attended the funeral, had never grieved for him, and still felt in some way as if she was waiting for him to return. So we had to unblock that grief before she was able to start to process the loss of her mother.
Wow. Wow.
That was an extraordinary example, actually, that proved the rule. It was amazing.
Great.
It was an amazing process.
Fantastic. I'm sure that was hugely helpful for that lady.
And I think for other people, sometimes I'm a bereavement counsellor as well, and while that person is grieving for the person who just recently died, up pops other losses that they've had in their life that they've never really processed, and it's sort of like a snowball effect. I think it just gets bigger and bigger, and then pew, it just explodes. I think it's incredibly important, if possible, to experience grief when you're going through the grieving process. Sometimes we try and push things down because we don't have time or we're responsible for other people. But I think it just sits there somewhere and waits for an opportunity to show itself. Sometimes it's like a sideswipe. We're not prepared for the grief when it comes, and sort of just knocks us sideways. And, oh, what on earth is happening to me? And actually what's happening to you is something that should have happened some time ago, but you weren't able to process it at the time. So that's something I am very aware of, but it's not always possible to grieve at the time. I just think people might be helpful for them to be aware that grief is still quite possibly there and waiting to be able to find a safe time to show itself.
Sure. And obviously the benefit of having counsellors trained, so a trained counsellor like yourself to talk to would be a huge benefit.
I think I always say to people, it's one of my great philosophies in life is get help, get help, get help. And I know that's easier said than done. But wherever possible, get whatever help is available to you, whether it's in book form or whether you're able to access counselling. Really get help when possible. And as I said, I know that it's not always possible.
No. So, how would find someone? At what point would you get involved, and then how would
whatever point you want, whatever point they want you to.
And how would someone find someone like you?
Well, the Living Well, Dying Well is the charity that I think Doula UK comes under. So look up the charity Living Well, Dying Well or Doula UK. Yes, I would imagine that would be the way to. But you can bring in a doula at any time that you want, at the beginning, in the middle, or towards the end. I mean, it's up to the individual. It's up to the individual.
And what type of kind of practical, other than the great listening skills, which you mentioned, what other kind of practical things that would a doula do?
What are the practical things?
Yeah,
well, they would try to ensure that your end of life wishes were met. And they can only do what they can do. It's not always possible. But they would make sure that they knew what you wanted and that you had written down your wishes, your end of life wishes. But again, we're not medical. We have no medical qualifications. That's not part of the doula remit. We are not medical people.
Sure, I understand that. So, and going forward, I mean, are you near the end of your training? Or
I have part 3 to go through. I haven't yet decided which part of being a doula interests me the most. So this is I'm still learning, and I'm still it takes a lot of digestion. This course, it's wonderful, and it's just, you're learning such amazing skills. I love it. It's just
And
wonderful.
absolutely, I'm sure lots of our listeners would be interested in finding out more about it and, and, and understanding what it's about, whether they want to, you know, have a doula in their lives at some point, or maybe even to undergo some training themselves. Because
Well, Living Well, Dying Well is the website that they should be looking at. My website has some details of it, but the Living Well, Dying Well website is really the place to go for information.
great. Um, So, well, I'll put all those, you know, all the show notes on the websites, etc., with all the links, etc. If you had to leave our listeners with one thought or piece of advice on the topic of bereavement, what would that be?
On the topic of bereavement, well, it's so individual, isn't it? I think it's the most painful. I think being bereaved is the most painful of all losses. And I think abnormal feelings during abnormal times are normal, if that makes any sense. So whatever you're feeling is normal because you're going through an abnormal time. I also am a great believer in continuing to talk to the person who has died. If that feels comfortable to you, you only do what is comfortable to you. You don't forcing something or pretending something will never work. But if you feel comfortable to continue to talk to the person who is no longer there, then talk to them or write to them or continue the relationship. The relationship is still there, even though the person isn't there. You can't cut a relationship that you've had with somebody that you care about. So I just really believe in continuing the relationship, even if you can't see that person, because to you they still exist. So I don't know if that's helpful, but you know, and the truth is, it won't always feel as bad as it does at the beginning. You know, there's no end date to grief. There's a start date, but there's no end date. Yeah, there is no, you know, no magic wand.
Sure.
No
But I
magic
mean, I
wand.
think definitely with the help of people like you and the skills that you've got, and you know, some of the huge learning that you've got, books that you've written, I think definitely that's a great place to start. Um, so before we go, you know, it's been a great, fantastic conversation. So, could you just explain to any listeners how they can find out more about your books, end of life management, and how they can get in touch with you?
Yes, my website is EL Management, which is End of Life Management, but it's elmanagement.org. And you can reach me through my website. Our books are obviously with Amazon. It's End of Life, The Essential Guide to Caring, and the Essential Life Guide, to Life After Bereavement. So those are available.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Great. Well, so if you'd like to know, find out more about Judy's books and the great work that she's doing, we can check out the show notes on our website at theretirementcafe.co.uk, where you'll also find all those useful links. If you've enjoyed this episode and you've not yet subscribed, then you can do so again on our website, retirementcafe.co.uk, or on your preferred podcast player. To find out who's coming up next on the podcast, please visit the website, retirementcafe.co.uk/upcoming. And if you'd like to get in touch with me, you can email me at info@retirementcafe.co.uk or connect with me on Twitter, which is @JustinKingCFB. So until next time, this is Justin King helping you feel more informed in your retirement.